From economy of occupation to economy of genocide. Report of the Special Rapporteur on the situation of human rights in the Palestinian territories occupied since 1967 by Francesca Albanese. Summary. In the present report, the Special Rapporteur on the situation of human rights in the Palestinian territories occupied since 1967 investigates the corporate machinery sustaining the Israeli settler-colonial project of displacement and replacement of the Palestinians in the occupied territory. While political leaders and governments shirk their obligations, far too many corporate entities have profited from the Israeli economy of illegal occupation, apartheid, and now genocide. The complicity exposed by the report is just the tip of the iceberg. Ending it will not happen without holding the private sector accountable, including its executives. International law recognizes varying degrees of responsibility, each requiring scrutiny and accountability, particularly in this case, where a people's self-determination and very existence are at stake. This is a necessary step to end the genocide and dismantle the global system that has allowed it. Introduction. Colonial endeavours and associated genocides have historically been driven and enabled by the corporate sector. Commercial interests have contributed to the dispossession of indigenous people of their lands, a mode of domination known as colonial racial capitalism. The same is true of Israeli colonization of Palestinian lands, its expansion into the occupied Palestinian territory, and its institutionalization of a regime of settler-colonial apartheid. After denying Palestinian self-determination for decades, Israel is now imperilling the very existence of the Palestinian people in Palestine. The role of corporate entities in sustaining the illegal Israeli occupation and its ongoing genocidal campaign in Gaza is the subject of the present investigative report, which is focused on how corporate interests underpin the Israeli settler-colonial twofold logic of displacement and replacement aimed at dispossessing and erasing Palestinians from their lands. The Special Rapporteur discusses corporate entities in various sectors: arms manufacturers, tech firms, building and construction companies, extractive and service industries, banks, pension funds, insurers, universities, and charities. These entities enable the denial of self-determination and other structural violations in the occupied Palestinian territory, including occupation, annexation, and crimes of apartheid and genocide, as well as a long list of ancillary crimes and human rights violations, from discrimination, wanton destruction, forced displacement, and pillage to extrajudicial killing and starvation. Had proper human rights due diligence been undertaken, corporate entities would have long ago disengaged from Israeli occupation. Instead, post-October 2023, corporate actors have contributed to the acceleration of the displacement replacement process through the military campaign that has pulverized Gaza and displaced the largest number of Palestinians in the West Bank since 1967. While it is impossible to fully capture the scale and extent of decades of corporate connivance in the exploitation of the occupied Palestinian territory, the present report exposes the integration of the economies of settler-colonial occupation and genocide. In it, the Special Rapporteur calls for accountability for corporate entities and their executives at both the domestic and international levels. Commercial endeavours, enabling and profiting from the obliteration of innocent people's lives, must cease. Corporate entities must refuse to be complicit in human rights violations and international crimes, or be held to account. Methodology. Corporate entities in the present report refers to business enterprises, multinational corporations, for-profit and not-for-profit entities, whether private, public, or state-owned. Corporate responsibility applies regardless of the size, sector, operational context, ownership, and structure of the entity. In the report, the Special Rapporteur builds on extensive literature, especially by civil society and by the Working Group on the issue of human rights and transnational corporations and other business enterprises, on how Israel has created and maintained its own economy through the occupation and a captive economy for the Palestinians. The Special Rapporteur also builds upon and situates within the broader matrix of the unlawful Israeli occupation the database established by the Office of the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights, OHCHR, pursuant to Human Rights Council Resolution 3136 and 5325. The OHCHR database lists only business enterprises that have directly and indirectly enabled, facilitated, and profited from the construction and growth of the settlements. The Special Rapporteur developed a database of approximately 1,000 corporate entities from the unprecedented number of submissions received, more than 200, following her call for input when preparing the investigation. This helped map how corporate entities worldwide have been implicated in human rights violations and international crimes in the occupied Palestinian territory. Over 45 entities named in the report have been duly informed of the facts that led the Special Rapporteur to formulate a series of allegations. 15 replied. The complex web of corporate structures and the often obscured links between parents and subsidiaries, franchises, joint ventures, licensees, etc., implicates many more. The investigation behind the present report demonstrates the lengths to which corporations will go to conceal their complicity. The report is complemented by the attached annex, which provides an overview of the relevant legal framework. Legal context. The law governing corporate responsibility has deep roots in the historic relationship between violent dispossession and private power, and the legacy of corporate collusion with settler colonialism and racial segregation. Early charter companies, granted broad state-like powers, gradually evolved into private, limited liability corporations as intercolonial trade grew vital to European economies. Colonial powers continued to rely on these relationships to outsource, obscure, and avoid accountability for the dispossession and enslavement of indigenous people and the expropriation of their resources. Corporations have not only inherited the benefits of this legal veil of separation, but have also emerged as shapers of international law. Today, some corporate conglomerates exceed the gross domestic product, the GDP, of entire sovereign states, sometimes wielding more power, political, economic, and discursive, than states themselves. Corporations enjoy increasing recognition as rights holders, with still insufficient corresponding obligations. The asymmetry of immense power without sufficiently justiciable accountability exposes a fundamental global governance gap. Corporations and their home states, primarily global minority states, continue to exploit structural inequalities rooted in colonial dispossession. Meanwhile, weaker regulatory systems in formerly colonized states and development and investment imperatives mean corporations often evade accountability. Nevertheless, important precedents exist. The post-Holocaust industrialist trial, such as the E.G. Farben trial, laid the groundwork for recognizing the international criminal responsibility of corporate executives for participation in international crimes. By addressing corporate complicity in apartheid, the Truth and Reconciliation Commission of South Africa helped shape corporate responsibility for human rights violations. Increasing domestic and international litigation signal a growing trend toward corporate accountability. The case of Palestine further tests international standards. Today, the guiding principles of business and human rights set out the normative framework for states and corporate entities' compliance with international law. States have the primary obligation to prevent, investigate, punish, and remedy human rights abuses by third parties and may breach their obligations if they fail to do so. The guiding principles crystallize the human rights standard applicable to corporate conduct that apply regardless of whether states uphold their primary obligations. International humanitarian law and criminal law also confer specific obligations and liabilities on private actors, with domestic jurisdictions primarily responsible for enforcement. The guiding principles establish a continuum of responsibilities depending on whether corporate entities cause, contribute to, or are directly linked with adverse human rights impacts. In conflicts, businesses must observe heightened human rights due diligence to identify concerns and adjust their conduct. The liability of corporate entities will be determined by their actions and by the human rights impact. Due diligence is not sufficient to absolve corporations of liability. At a minimum, corporate entities directly linked to human rights impacts must exercise leverage or consider termination of their activities or relationships. Failure to act accordingly may give rise to liability. Where violations constitute crimes, corporate executives and, increasingly, entities themselves may be held accountable for their knowledge of and material contributions to crimes. In the occupied Palestinian territory, building of decades of documented human rights violations and crimes, recent judicial developments leave no room for doubt that corporate engagement with any component of the occupation is connected with violations of jus cogens norms and international crimes. In the occupied Palestinian territory, building of decades of documented human rights violations and crimes, recent judicial developments leave no room for doubt that corporate engagement with any component of the occupation is connected with violations of jus cogens norms and international crimes. Citing racial segregation and apartheid, violations of the right to self-determination, and the prohibition on the use of force, the International Court of Justice unequivocally affirmed the illegality of the presence of Israel, including its military presence, colonies, and its infrastructure and resource control. Furthermore, the atrocities committed since October 2023 triggered proceedings for genocides before the International Court of Justice and for war crimes and crimes against humanity before the International Criminal Court. The International Court of Justice has ordered Israel to stop creating life-destroying conditions and recently reminded states of their international obligations to avoid transferring arms that might be used to violate international conventions. These decisions place on corporate entities a prima facie responsibility to not engage and/or to withdraw totally and unconditionally from any associated dealings, and to ensure that any engagement with Palestinians enables their self-determination. Where corporate entities continue their activities and relationships with Israel, with its economy, military, and public and private sectors connected to the occupied Palestinian territory, they may be found to have knowingly contributed to violation of the Palestinian right to self-determination, annexation of Palestinian territory, maintenance of an unlawful occupation, and therefore the crime of aggression and associated human rights violations, crimes of apartheid and genocide, other ancillary crimes and violations. Both criminal and civil laws in various jurisdictions can be invoked to hold corporate entities or their executives accountable for violations of human rights and/or crimes under international law. From the economy of settler-colonial occupation to the economy of genocide. Settler colonialism involves extraction and profit from and colonization of land through the expulsion of its owners. In Palestine, historically, companies have driven and enabled the process of displacement and replacement of the Arab population, foundational to the logic of settler-colonial erasure. The Jewish National Fund, a land-purchasing corporate entity founded in 1901, helped plan and carrying out the gradual removal of Arab Palestinians, which intensified with the Nakba and has continued ever since. Increasingly aided by corporate entities, Israel has pursued Palestinian dispossession and displacement, especially after 1967. The corporate sector has materially contributed to its endeavor by providing Israel with the weapons and machinery required to destroy homes, schools, hospitals, places of leisure and worship, livelihoods, and productive assets, such as olive groves and orchards, to segregate and control communities, and to restrict access to natural resources. Increasingly aided by corporate entities, Israel has pursued Palestinian dispossession and displacement, especially after 1967. The corporate sector has materially contributed to this endeavor by providing Israel with the weapons and machinery required to destroy homes, schools, hospitals, places of leisure and worship, livelihoods, and productive assets such as olive groves and orchards, to segregate and control communities, and to restrict access to natural resources. By helping to militarize and incentivize illegal Israeli presence in the occupied Palestinian territory, the corporate sector has contributed to the creation of the conditions for Palestinian ethnic cleansing. Corporate entities have played a key role in stifling the Palestinian economy, sustaining Israeli expansion in occupied land while facilitating the replacement of Palestinians. Draconian restrictions on trade and investment, tree planting, fishing and water for colonies have debilitated agriculture and industry and turned the occupied Palestinian territory into a captive market. Companies have profited by exploiting Palestinian labor and resources, degrading and diverting natural resources, building and powering colonies, and selling and marketing derived goods and services in Israel, the occupied Palestinian territory, and globally. The Israeli-Palestinian interim agreement on the West Bank and the Gaza Strip by the Oslo Second Accords entrenched this exploitation, de facto institutionalizing the monopoly of Israel over 61% of the resource-rich West Bank. Israel gains from this exploitation, while it costs the Palestinian economy at least 35% of its GDP. Financial and academic institutions have also enabled the conditions for Palestinian displacement and replacement. Banks, asset management firms, pension funds, and insurers have channeled finance into the illegal occupation. Universities, centers of intellectual growth and power, have sustained the political ideology underpinning the colonization of Palestinian land, developed weaponry, and overlooked or even endorsed systemic violence. While global research collaborations have obscured Palestinian erasure behind the veil of academic neutrality. After October 2023, long-standing systems of control, exploitation, and dispossession metamorphosed into economic, technological, and political infrastructures mobilized to inflict mass violence and immense destruction. Entities that previously enabled and profited from Palestinian elimination and erasure within the economy of occupation, instead of disengaging, are now involved in the economy of genocide. The following sections illustrate how 8 key sectors, operating separately and interdependently through the core pillars of the settler-colonial economy of displacement and replacement, have adapted to its genocidal practices. Displacement. Post-October 2023, weapons and military technologies used to advance Palestinian expulsion have become tools for mass killing and destruction, rendering Gaza and parts of the West Bank uninhabitable. Surveillance and incarceration technologies, ordinarily used to enforce segregation apartheid, have evolved into tools for indiscriminate targeting of the Palestinian population. Heavy machinery previously used for house demolitions, infrastructure destruction, and resource seizure in the West Bank have been repurposed to obliterate the urban landscape of Gaza, preventing displaced populations from returning and reconstituting as a community. Military sector, the business of elimination. Militarized violence created the State of Israel and remains the engine of its settler-colonial project. Israeli and international weapons manufacturers have developed increasingly effective systems to drive Palestinians off their land. By collaborating and competing, they have refined technologies that enable Israel to intensify oppression, repression, and destruction. Prolonged occupation and repeated military campaigns have provided testing grounds for cutting-edge military capabilities. Air defense platforms, drones, targeting tools powered by artificial intelligence, and even the F-35 program led by the United States of America. These technologies are then marketed as battle-proven. The military-industrial complex has become the economic backbone of the state. Between 2020 and 2024, Israel was the 8th largest arms exporter worldwide. The two most prominent Israeli weapons companies, Elbit Systems, established as a public-private partnership and later privatized, and state-owned Israel Aerospace Industries, are among the top 50 arms manufacturers globally. Since 2023, Elbit Systems has cooperated closely on Israel military operations, embedding key staff in the Ministry of Defense, and was awarded the 2024 Israeli Defense Prize. Elbit Systems and Israel Aerospace Industries provide a critical domestic supply of weaponry and reinforce Israeli military alliances through arms exports and joint development of military technology. International partnership providing weaponry and technical support have enhanced Israeli capacity to perpetuate apartheid and, recently, to sustain an assault on Gaza. Israel benefits from the largest ever defense procurement program for the F-35 fighter jet, led by United States-based Lockheed Martin, alongside at least 1,650 other companies, including Italian manufacturer Leonardo SpA, and 8 states. Components and parts constructed globally contribute to the Israeli F-35 fleet, which Israel customizes and maintains in partnership with Lockheed Martin and domestic companies. Israel was the first to fly the F-35 in combat in 2018 and to use it in beast mode in 2025. Lockheed Martin F-35 and F-16 fighter jets pivotal to the Israel Air Force, have significant carrying and fire capacity, including GBU-31 Joint Direct Attack Munition JDAM and unguided Mk-84's 2,000-pound bombs. An F-35 can carry over 18,000 pounds of bombs. Post-October 2023, F-35 and F-16s have been integral to equipping Israel with the unprecedented aerial power to drop an estimated 85,000 tons of bombs, much of it unguided, to kill and injure more than 179,411 Palestinians and obliterate Gaza. Drones, hexacopters, and quadcopters have also been omnipresent killing machines in the skies of Gaza. Drones largely developed and supplied by Elbit Systems and Israel Aerospace Industries have long flown alongside fighter jets, surveilling Palestinians and delivering target intelligence. In the past 2 decades, with support from these companies and collaborations with institutions such as the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, drones used by Israel acquired automated weapons systems and the ability to fly in swarm formation. To supply Israel with these weapons and facilitate arms export and import transactions, manufacturers depend on a web of intermediaries, including legal, auditing, and consulting firms, as well as arms dealers, agents, and brokers. Suppliers such as the Japanese FANUC Corporation provide robotic machinery for weapons production lines. Suppliers such as the Japanese FANUC Corporation provide robotic machinery for weapons production lines, including for Israel Aerospace Industries, Elbit Systems, and Lockheed Martin. Shipping companies such as the Danish A.P. Møller Maersk A.S. transport components, parts, weapons, and raw materials, sustaining a steady flow for United States supplied military equipment post-October 2023. For Israeli companies such as Elbit Systems and Israel Aerospace Industries, the ongoing genocide has been a profitable venture. The 65% surge in Israel military spending from 2023 to 2024, amounting to $46.5 billion, one of the highest per capita worldwide, generated a sharp surge in their annual profits. Foreign arms companies, especially producers of munitions and ordnance, also profit. Surveillance and carcerality, the dark side of the startup nation. Repression of Palestinians has become progressively automated, with tech companies providing dual-use infrastructure to integrate mass data collection and surveillance, while profiting from the unique testing ground for military technology offered by the occupied Palestinian territory. Fueled by United States tech giants establishing subsidiaries and research and development centers in Israel, fueled by United States tech giants establishing subsidiaries and research and development centers in Israel, claims by Israel of security needs have spurred unparalleled developments in carceral and surveillance services, from closed-circuit television (CCTV) networks, biometric surveillance, advanced tech checkpoints networks, smart walls, and drone surveillance to cloud computing, artificial intelligence, and data analytics supporting on-the-ground military personnel. Israeli tech firms often grow out of military infrastructure and strategy, as the NSO Group, founded by ex-unit 8,200 members, did. Its Pegasus spyware, designed for covert smartphone surveillance, has been used against Palestinian activists and licensed globally to target leaders, journalists, and human rights defenders. Exported under the Defense Export Control Law, NSO Group surveillance technology enables spyware diplomacy while reinforcing state impunity. Exported under the Defense Export Control Law, NSO Group surveillance technology enables spyware diplomacy while reinforcing state impunity. IBM has operated in Israel since 1972, training military and intelligence personnel, especially from Unit 8200, for the technology sector and startup scene. Since 2019, IBM Israel has operated and upgraded the central database for the Population and Immigration Authority, enabling collection, storage, and governmental use of biometric data on Palestinians, and supporting the discriminatory permit regime of Israel. Before the IBM, Hewlett-Packard Enterprises, HPE, maintained the database, and its Israeli subsidiary is still providing servers. Hewlett-Packard, HP, has long enabled the apartheid system of Israel, supporting technology to the coordination of government activities in the territories, the COGAT. The prison service and the police. Since the 2015 split of the company into Hewlett-Packard Enterprises and HP Inc., opaque business structures have obscured the roles of their 7 remaining Israeli subsidiaries. Microsoft has been active in Israel since 1991, developing its largest center outside the United States. Its technologies are embedded in the prison service, police, universities, and schools, including in colonies. Microsoft has been integrating its system and civilian tech across the Israeli military since 2003, while acquiring Israeli cybersecurity and surveillance startups. As Israeli apartheid military and population control systems generate increasing volumes of data. Its reliance on cloud storage and computing has grown. As Israeli apartheid, military and population control systems generate increasing volumes of data, its reliance on cloud storage and computing has grown. In 2021, Israel awarded Alphabet Inc., Google, and Amazon.com Inc. a $1.2 billion contract, Project Nimbus, largely funded through Ministry of Defense expenditure to provide core tech infrastructure. Microsoft, Alphabet, and Amazon grant Israel virtually government-wide access to their cloud and artificial intelligence technologies, enhancing data processing, decision-making, and surveillance and analysis capacities. In October 2023, when the Israeli internal military cloud overloaded, Microsoft, with its Azure platform and the Project Nimbus consortium, stepped in with critical cloud and artificial intelligence infrastructure. Their Israel-located servers ensure data sovereignty and a shield from accountability under favorable contracts offering minimal restrictions or oversight. In July 2024, an Israeli colonel described cloud tech as a weapon in every sense of the word, citing these companies. The Israeli military has developed artificial intelligence systems such as Lavender, Gospel, and Where's Daddy to process data and generates lists of targets, reshaping modern warfare and illustrating the dual-sense nature of artificial intelligence. Palantir Technologies Inc., whose tech collaboration with Israel long predates October 2023. Palantir Technologies Inc., whose tech collaboration with Israel long predates October 2023, expanded its support to the Israel military post-October 2023. Expanded its support to the Israeli military post-October 2023. These are reasonable grounds to believe Palantir has provided automatic predictive policing technology, core defense infrastructure for rapid and scaled-up construction and deployment of military software, and its artificial intelligence platform, which allows real-time battlefield data integration for automated decision-making. In January 2024, Palantir announced a new strategic partnership with Israel and held a board meeting in Tel Aviv in solidarity. In April 2025, Palantir's chief executive officer responded to accusations that Palantir had killed Palestinians in Gaza by saying, mostly terrorists, that's true. Both incidents are indicative of executive-level knowledge and purpose vis-à-vis the unlawful use of force by Israel and failure to prevent such acts or withdraw involvement. Israel, as the startup nation incentivized by the post-9/11 global securitization boom, has received a significant boost through the genocide. It ranked first globally for the number of startups per capita, with a 143% growth in military tech startups in 2024, and with technology comprising 64% of Israeli exports through the genocide. Civilian guys, heavy machinery in service of settler-colonial destruction. Civilian technologies have long served as dual-use tools for settler-colonial occupation. Israeli military operations rely heavily on equipment from leading global manufacturers to unground Palestinians from their land, demolishing homes, public buildings, farmland, roads, and other vital infrastructure. Since October 2023, this machinery has been integral to damage and destroying 70% of structures and 81% of cropland in Gaza. For decades, Caterpillar Inc. has provided Israel with equipment used to demolish Palestinian homes and infrastructure through both the United States Foreign Military Financing Program and an exclusive licensee requisitioned by Israeli law into the military. In partnership with companies such as Israel Aerospace Industries, Elbit Systems, and Leonardo DRS, Inc. owned RADA Electronic Industries, Israel has evolved Caterpillar's D9 bulldozer into automated, remote commanded core weaponry of the military. Deployed in almost every military activity since 2000, clearing incursion lines, neutralizing the territory, and killing Palestinians. Since October 2023, Caterpillar equipment has been documented and being used to carry out mass demolitions, including of homes, mosques, and life-sustaining infrastructure, raid hospitals, and burying alive wounded Palestinians. In 2025, Caterpillar secured a further multi-million-dollar contract with Israel. The Korean HD Hyundai and its partially owned subsidiary Doosan, alongside the Swedish Volvo Group and other major heavy machinery manufacturers, have long been linked to the destruction of Palestinian property, each supplying equipment through exclusively licensed Israeli dealers. Volvo licensee is an OHCHR database listed company, and together they own Merkavim Transportation Technologies Ltd, which produces armored buses sold to service colonies. Since at least 2007, Volvo machinery has been used to raze Palestinian areas, including in East Jerusalem and Masafer Yatta. For over a decade, HD Hyundai machinery has been used to demolish Palestinian homes and raze farmland, including olive groves. After October 2023, Israel increased the use of the equipment of those companies in the urban destruction of Gaza, including in flattening Rafah and Jabalia, after which the military obscured their logos. The companies have continued supplying the Israeli market despite abundant evidence of the criminal use of this machinery by Israel and repeated calls for human rights groups to sever ties. Passive suppliers become deliberate contributors to a system of displacement. Replacement. As corporate actors have contributed to the deconstruction of Palestinian life in the occupied Palestinian territory, they have also helped the construction of what replaces it. Building colonies and their infrastructure, extracting and trading materials, energy and agricultural products, and bringing visitors to colonies as if to a regular holiday destination. Post-October 2023, these activities have sustained unprecedented growth in the settlements enterprises, with corporate entities continuing to power and profit from the creation of conditions of life calculated to destroy the Palestinian population, including through the near total cutting off of water, electricity, and fuel. Construction. More than 371 colonies and illegal outposts have been built, powered and traded with by companies facilitating the replacement by Israel of the indigenous population in the occupied Palestinian territory. In 2024, these intensified after the administration of colonies moved from the military to the civilian government and the Ministry of Construction and Housing budget doubled, with $200 million allotted for colony construction. From November 2023 to October 2024, Israel established 57 new colonies and outposts, with Israeli and international companies supplying machinery, raw materials, and logistical support. Caterpillar, HD Hyundai, and Volvo excavators and heavy equipment have been used in the construction of illegal colonies for at least 10 years. The German Heidelberg Materials AG, through its subsidiary Hanson Israel, has contributed to the pillage of millions of tons of dolomite rock from the Nahal Raba quarry on land seized from Palestinian villages in the West Bank. In 2018, Hanson Israel won a public tender to supply materials from that quarry for colony construction and has since nearly exhausted the quarry, prompting ongoing expansion requests. Various companies contributed to developing roads and public transport infrastructure critical to establishing and expanding the colonies, and connecting them to Israel while excluding and segregating Palestinians. The Spanish-Basque Construcciones Auxiliar de Ferrocarriles joined a consortium with a OHCHR database-listed company to maintain and expand the Jerusalem Light Rail Red Line and build the new Green Line, at a time when other companies had withdrawn owing to international pressure. These lines include 27 kilometers of new tracks and 50 new stations in the West Bank, connecting colonies with West Jerusalem. Doosan and Volvo excavators and machinery has been used, and Heidelberg subsidiary supplied materials for a light rail bridge. Real estate companies sells properties in colonies to Israeli and international buyers. The global real estate group Keller Williams Realty LLC, through its Israeli franchise KW Israel, has had branches based in the colonies. In March 2024, Keller Williams, through another franchise, Home in Israel, ran a real estate roadshow in Canada and the United States, jointly sponsored with several companies developing and marketing thousands of apartments in colonies. The grip on natural resources, the incubator of conditions of life calculated to destroy. Since 1967, Israel has exercised systemic control over Palestinian natural resources, building infrastructure that integrated its colonies into Israeli national systems and entrenched Palestinian dependency on them. When Israel Defense Minister Yoav Gallant ordered a complete siege on Gaza on 9 October 2023, instantly cutting off water, electricity, and fuel. This engineered dependency, designed to displace and control life, was operationalized for genocide. Those supplies have never been fully restored, contributing to the deliberate creation of conditions of life calculated to bring about the destruction of Palestinians as a group. This is also why the grip on resources in the West Bank, tightened after October 2023, cannot be viewed in isolation from the destruction unfolding in Gaza. Water. Israel forces Palestinians to purchase water sourced from two major aquifers in their own territory at inflated prices and with intermittent supply. The Israeli national water company Mekorot has a water monopoly in the occupied Palestinian territory. In Gaza, more than 97% of water from the coastal aquifer does not meet the water quality standards of the World Health Organization, making residents depend on Mekorot pipelines for most of their drinking water. For at least the first 6 months post-October 2023, Mekorot ran its Gaza pipelines at 22% capacity, leaving areas such as Gaza City without water 95% of the time, actively aiding the transformation of water into a tool of genocide. Electricity, gas, and fuel. International energy companies have fueled the energy-intensive Israeli genocide. Reliant on fuel and coal imports, Israel maintains an integrated energy infrastructure, serving both Israel and the occupied Palestinian territory, seamlessly powering illegal settlers while controlling and obstructing Palestinian access. Gaza's power plant provides just 10 to 20% of Gaza electricity needs, leaving it heavily reliant on fuel for generators and 10% Israeli supply lines. Since October 2023, Israel has cut energy to most of Gaza. Without electricity or fuel, most power pumps, hospitals, and transport reached to the brink of total collapse. Collapsed sanitation systems have contributed to a resurgence in polio, and vital desalination plants were forced to shut down. Coal for electricity to Israel originates primarily from Colombia. 60% of Israel coal imports in 2023-24. United States headquartered Drummond Company Inc. and the Swiss-based Glencore plc are the primary suppliers. Their respective subsidiaries own the mines and the three ports involved in the delivery of 15 coal shipments to Israel since October 2023, including 6 shipments after Colombia suspended coal exports to Israel in August 2024. Glencore was also involved in shipments from South Africa. These shipments accounted for 15% of Israeli coal imports in 2023 and 2024. The United States Chevron Corporation, in consortium with Israeli NewMed Energy, a subsidiary of the OEHCHR database-listed Delek Group, extracts natural gas from the Leviathan and Tamar fields. It paid the government of Israel $453 million in royalties and taxes in 2023. Chevron's consortium supplies more than 70% of Israeli energy consumption. Chevron also profits from its part ownership of the East Mediterranean gas pipeline, which passes through Palestinian maritime territory, and from gas export sales to Egypt and Jordan. The Gaza naval blockade is connected to Israel securing the Tamar gas supply and the East Mediterranean gas pipeline. At a time of increasing brutality, the British company BP plc is expanding involvement in the Israeli economy, with exploration licenses confirmed in March 2025, which allow BP to explore Palestinian maritime expanses illegally exploited by Israel. BP and Chevron are also the largest contributors to Israeli imports of crude oil, as major owners of the strategic Azeri-Baku-Tbilisi-Ceyhan pipeline and the Kazakh-Caspian Pipeline Consortium, respectively, and of their associated oil fields. Each conglomerate effectively supplied 8% of Israeli crude oil between October 2023 and July 2024, supplemented by crude oil shipments from Brazilian oil fields, in which Petrobras holds the largest stakes, and military jet fuel. Oil from this company supplies 2 refineries in Israel. From the Haifa refinery, 2 OHCHR database-listed companies supply their petrol stations through Israel and the occupied Palestinian territory, including the colonies, and the military through government-awarded contracts. From Ashdod refinery, a subsidiary of the OEH-CHR database-listed company Paz Retail and Energy Ltd, provides jet fuel to the Israel Air Force operating in Gaza. By supplying Israel with coal, gas, oil and fuel, companies are contributing to civilian infrastructures that Israel uses to entrench permanent annexation and now weaponizes in the destruction of Palestinian life in Gaza. The same infrastructure that these companies supply resources into has serviced the Israeli military and its energy-intensive tech-driven obliteration of Gaza. The ostensibly civilian nature of such infrastructure does not exonerate a company from responsibility. Trading the fruits of illegality. Agribusiness. Agribusiness has thrived on Israel-led extractivism and land grabbing, producing goods and technologies serving Israeli settler-colonial interests, expanding market dominance and attracting global investment, while erasing Palestinian food systems and accelerating displacement. Tnuva, the largest food conglomerate in Israel, now majority owned by the Chinese Bright Food Group Corporation Ltd, has fueled and benefited from land dispossession. Tnuva's chairman recognized that agriculture in general and dairy farming in particular are a strategic resource and a significant pillar in the settlement enterprise. Israel has used kibbutzim and agricultural outposts to seize Palestinian land and replace Palestinians. Companies like Tnuva help by sourcing products from these colonies, then exploit the resulting captive Palestinian market to build market dominance. Palestinian dependence on the Israeli dairy industry has increased 160% in the decade following the destruction caused by Israel to Gaza's dairy industry in 2014, amounting to sector losses estimated as $43 million. Tnuva has absorbed the loss of the Gaza market, failing to use its substantial leverage to influence the situation. Netafim, a global leader in drip irrigation technology, now 80% owned by the Mexican company Orbia Advanced Corporation, has designed its agri-tech in concert with the expansion imperatives of Israel. While maintaining a global image of sustainability, Netafim technology has enabled the intensive exploitation of water and land in the West Bank, further depleting Palestinian natural resources, while being refined through collaboration with Israeli military technology firms. In the Jordan Valley, Netafim-aided irrigation systems have facilitated Israeli crop expansion, while Palestinian farmers, denied water and with 93% unirrigated land, are pushed out, unable to compete with Israeli production. Furthermore, such irrigation techniques threaten to exhaust the Jordan River and Dead Sea. Companies such as Tnuva and Netafim continue to manufacture good security for Israelis, while the food system to which they belong causes food insecurity and even famine for others. Netafim brands itself as a sustainable innovator while perfecting age-old techniques of colonial exploitation. Global retail. Israeli products, including those from colonies, food global markets through major retailers, often with no scrutiny. Israeli products, including those from colonies, food global markets through major retailers, often with no scrutiny. To dodge growing backlash, companies mask origin through misleading labels, barcodes, and supply chain mixing, effectively making occupations shelf-ready. To dodge growing backlash, companies mask origin through misleading labels, barcodes, and supply chain mixing, effectively making occupation shelf-ready. Global logistics giants like AP Moller Maersk AS are integral to this ecosystem. For years they have shipped goods from the colonies and OHCHR database listed companies straight to the United States and other markets. In many countries, no distinction is made between products from Israel and those from its colonies. Even in the European Union, where labeling is required, these goods are still allowed on the market, and the responsibility is put on uninformed customers. Given the illegality of the colonies under international law, these products should not be traded at all. Supermarket chains, including many listed in the OHCHR database, and e-commerce platforms such as Amazon.com operate directly in colonies, sustaining their economy, enabling expansion and participating in apartheid through discriminatory service delivery. Major online travel platforms, used by millions to reserve accommodation, profit from the occupation by selling tourism that sustains the colonies, excludes Palestinians, promotes settler narratives, and legitimizes annexation. Booking Holdings Inc. and Airbnb Inc. lease properties and hotel rooms in Israeli colonies. Booking.com has more than doubled its listings in the West Bank, from 26 in 2018 to 70 by May 2023, and tripled its East Jerusalem listings to 39 in the year post-October 2023. Airbnb has also amplified its colonial profiteering, growing from listing in 2016 to 350 in 2025, collecting up to 23% commission. These listings are linked with restricting Palestinian access to land and endangering nearby villages. In Tekoa, Airbnb enabled settler promotion of a warm and loving community, whitewashing settler violence against the neighboring Palestinian village of Tuku. Booking.com and Airbnb have been in the OHCHR database since 2020. Booking.com may label properties as Palestinian territory, Israeli settlement, while it continues to profit from the colonies and faces criminal complaints in the Kingdom of the Netherlands for laundering proceeds. Airbnb briefly delisted the illegal colony properties in 2018, but reversed course under pressure, now donating profits to humanitarian causes and converting colonial profiteering into humanitarian washing. Enablers. A list of enablers: financial, research, legal, consulting, media and advertising firms, long involved in sustaining the settler-colonial occupation through knowledge, narratives, skills and investment, have continued to support, profit from and normalize an economy operating in genocidal mode. The present section is focused just on two key enablers: the financial and academic sectors. Financing the violations. The financial sector channels critical funding to both state and corporate actors behind the Israeli occupation and apartheid, despite many companies in the sector committing to the principles for responsible investment and the United Nations Global Compact. As the main source of finance in the Israeli state budget, treasury bonds have played a critical role in funding the ongoing assault on Gaza. From 2022 to 2024, the Israeli military budget grew from 4.2% to 8.3% of GDP, driving the public budget into a 6.8% deficit. Israel funded this ballooning budget by increasing its bond issuance, including $8 billion in March 2024 and $5 billion in February 2025, alongside issuances of its domestic news shekel market. Some of the world's largest banks, including BNP Paribas and Barclays, stepped in to boost market confidence by underwriting these international and domestic treasury bonds, allowing Israel to contain the interest rate premium despite a credit downgrade. Asset management firms, including BlackRock, $68 million, Vanguard, $546 million, and Allianz's asset management subsidiary PIMCO, $960 million, were among at least 400 investors from 36 countries who purchased them. Meanwhile, the Development Corporation for Israel, i.e. Israel Bonds, provides a bond solicitation service for the government of Israel for overseas private individuals and other investors. The Development Corporation for Israel tripled by annual bond sales to funnel nearly $5 billion to Israel since October 2023, while offering investors the option of sending the return on bond investments to charitable organizations supporting the Israeli military and the colonies. These financial entities channel billions of dollars into treasury bonds and companies directly involved in Israeli occupation and genocide. BlackRock and its subsidiary iShares and Vanguard are among the largest institutional investors in many companies, holding these shares for distribution among their indexes of mutual funds and electronically traded funds, ETFs. BlackRock is the second largest institutional investor in Palantir, 8.6%, Microsoft, 7.8%, Amazon.com, 6.6%, Alphabet, 6.6%, and IBM, 8.6%. and the third largest in Lockheed Martin, 7.2%, and Caterpillar, 7.5%. Vanguard is the largest institutional investor in Caterpillar, 9.8%, Chevron, 8.9%, and Palantir, 9.1%, and second largest in Lockheed Martin, 9.2%, and Elbit Systems, 2%. Through their asset management, they implicate universities, pension funds, and ordinary people who passively invest their savings through the purchase of their funds and electronically traded funds. For their investment decisions, these companies often rely on benchmark indices such as FTSE, All World ex-US, JP Morgan Dollar EM Core Bond, UCITS, and MSCI ACWI USAITS, which are developed by financial services firms. Global insurance companies, including Allianz and AXA, also invest large sums in shares and bonds implicated in the occupation and genocide, partly as capital reserves for policyholder claims and regulatory requirements, but primarily to generate returns. Allianz holds at least $7.3 billion, and AXA, despite some divestment decisions, still invests at least $4.09 billion in tracked companies named in the present report. Their insurance policies also underwrite the risks other companies necessarily take when operating in Israel and the occupied Palestinian territory, thus enabling the commission of human rights abuses and de-risking the operational environment. Sovereign wealth and pension funds are also significant financiers. The world's largest sovereign wealth fund, the Norwegian government pension fund, claims it has the world's most comprehensive ethical guidelines. After October 2023, the fund increased its investment in Israeli companies by 32% to $1.9 billion. By the end of 2024, the fund has $121.5 billion, 60.9% of its total value, invested in companies named in the present report alone. The Caisse de dépôt et placement du Québec, which manages $463.3 billion Canadian dollars, 328.9 billion US dollars in pension funds for 6 million Canadians, has almost 9.6 billion Canadian dollars, 6.67 billion US dollars, invested in companies named in the present report, despite its sustainable investment policy and human rights policy. From 2023 to 2024, it almost tripled investment in Lockheed Martin, quadrupled investment in Caterpillar, and increased tenfold the investment in HD Hyundai. The financial sector also allows companies to access funds through loans and by underwriting their debt so they can sell it on the private bond market. From 2021 to 2023, BNP Paribas was a top European financier of the weapons industry supplying Israel, providing $410 million in loans to Leonardo, among others, alongside $5.2 billion in loans and underwriting for OHCHR database-listed companies. Similarly, in 2024, Barclays provided $2 billion in loans and underwriting to OHCHR database-listed companies, $862 million to Lockheed Martin, and $228 million to Leonardo. This direct investment is buttressed by the choice of financial advisory companies and responsible investment associations to not consider human rights violations in the occupied Palestinian territory in the harassment of environmental, social and governance (ESG) investing. This allows responsible ethical investment funds to remain environmental, social and governance compliant despite investing in Israeli government bonds and in shares of companies involved in violations in the occupied Palestinian territory. This entire environment has facilitated a record 179% increase in United States dollar equivalent equity prices of the companies listed in the Tel Aviv Stock Exchange since the start of the assault of Gaza, translating into a $157.9 billion gain. Faith-based charities have also become key financial enablers of illegal projects, including in the occupied Palestinian territory, often receiving tax deductions abroad despite strict regulatory charitable frameworks. The Jewish National Fund, KKL-JNF, and its over 20 affiliates fund settler expansion and military-linked projects. Since October 2023, platforms such as Israel Gives have enabled tax-deductible crowdfunding in 32 countries for Israeli military units and settlers. The United States-based Christian Friends of Israeli Communities, Dutch Christians for Israel, and global affiliates sent over $12.25 million in 2023 to various projects that support colonies, including some that train extremist settlers. Knowledge production and violation legitimization. In Israel, universities, particularly law schools, archaeology, and Middle Eastern studies departments, contribute to the ideological scaffolding of apartheid, cultivating state-aligned narratives, erasing Palestinian history, and justifying occupation practices. Meanwhile, science and technology departments serve as research and development hubs for collaborations between the Israeli military and arms contractors, including Elbit Systems, Israel Aerospace Industries, IBM, and Lockheed Martin, and so contribute to producing the tools for surveillance, crowd control, urban warfare, facial recognition, and targeted killing tools that are effectively tested on Palestinians. Leading universities, especially from global minority countries, partner with Israeli institutions in areas directly harming Palestinians. At the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, labs conduct weapons and surveillance research funded by the Israeli Ministry of Defense, the only foreign military financing research at the institute. Notable Israeli Ministry of Defense projects include drone swarm control, a distinct feature of the Israeli assault on Gaza since October 2023, pursuit algorithms, and underwater surveillance. From 2019 to 2024, the Institute managed a Lockheed Martin seed fund connecting students to teams in Israel. From 2019 to 2024, the Institute managed a Lockheed Martin seed fund connecting students to teams in Israel. From 2017 to 2025, Elbit Systems paid for membership to the Institute's Industrial Liaison Program, enabling access to research and talent. The European Commission's Horizon Europe program actively facilitates collaboration with Israeli institutions, including those complicit in apartheid and genocide. Since 2014, the European Commission has granted over 2.12 billion euros, $2.4 billion, to Israeli entities, including the Ministry of Defense, while European academic institutions both benefit from and reinforce this entanglement. The Technical University of Munich receives 198.5 million euros, $218 million in EC Horizon funding, including 11.47 million euros, $12.6 million for 22 collaborations with Israeli partners, military and tech firms. The university and Israel Aerospace Industries receive 792,795.75 euros, $868,416 to jointly develop with other participants green hydrogen refueling, technology relevant to Israel Aerospace Industries military drones used in Gaza. The university partners with IBM Israel, which runs the discriminatory Israeli population registry, on cloud and artificial intelligence systems, as part of a $7.75 million. As part of the 7.75 million euros, $8.52 million, IBM Israel receives in Horizon fundings. The university also collaborates on a 10.76 million euros, $11.71 million project on seamless shared urban mobility that includes the municipality of Jerusalem, a city entrenching annexation through urban transportation. It is impossible to disentangle the expertise that Israeli partners contribute to these partnerships from that gained and used in violations to which they are connected. Many universities have upheld ties with Israel despite the post-October 2023 escalation. One of many British examples, the University of Edinburgh, holds nearly £25.5 million, $31.72 million, 2.5% of its endowment, in four tech giants, Alphabet, Amazon, Microsoft, and IBM, central to the Israeli surveillance apparatus and the ongoing Gaza destruction. With both direct and indexed investments, the university ranks among the most financially entangled institutions in the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland. The university also partners with firms aiding Israeli military operations, including Leonardo SPA and Ben Gurion University, through the AI and Data Science Lab at Ben Gurion University, sharing research that directly links it with assault on Palestinians. The analysis in the present report only scratches the surface of the information received by the Special Rapporteur, who acknowledges the vital work of students and staff in holding universities to account. It casts a new light on global crackdowns on campus protesters. Shielding Israel and protecting institutional financial interests appears a more probable motivation than fighting alleged antisemitism. Conclusions. While life in Gaza is being obliterated and the West Bank is under escalating assault, the present report shows why the genocide carried out by Israel continues. Because it is lucrative for many. By shedding light on the political economy of an occupation turned genocidal, the report reveals how the forever occupation has become the ideal testing ground for arms manufacturers and big tech, providing boundless supply and demand, little oversight, and zero accountability. While investors and private and public institutions profit freely, too many influential corporate entities remain inextricably financially bound to Israeli apartheid and militarism. Post-October 2023, as the Israeli defense budget has doubled, and at a time of falling demand, production and consumer confidence, an international network of corporations has propped up the Israeli economy. BlackRock and Vanguard rank among the largest investors in arms companies, pivotal to the genocidal arsenal of Israel. Major global banks have underwritten Israeli treasury bonds, which have bankrolled the devastation, and the largest sovereign wealth and pension funds invested public and private savings in the genocidal economy, all the while claiming to respect ethical guidelines. Arms companies have turned over near record profits. Arms companies have turned over near record profits by equipping Israel with cutting-edge weaponry that has devastated a virtually defenseless civilian population. The machinery of global construction equipment giants has been instrumental in razing Gaza to the ground, preventing the return and reconstitution of Palestinian life. Extractive energy and mining conglomerates, while providing sources of civilian energy, have fueled the military and energy infrastructures of Israel, both used to create conditions of life calculated to destroy the Palestinian people. And while the genocide rages on, the inexorable process of violent annexation in the West Bank, including East Jerusalem, continues. Agribusiness still sustains expansion of the settlement enterprise. The largest online tourism platforms continue normalizing the illegality of Israeli colonies. Global supermarkets continue to stock Israeli settlement products, and universities worldwide, under the guise of research neutrality, continue to profit from an economy now operating in genocidal mode. Indeed, they are structurally dependent on settler-colonial collaborations and funding. Business continues as usual, but nothing about this system, in which business are integral, is neutral. Business continues as usual, but nothing about this system, in which businesses are integral, is neutral. The enduring ideological, political and economic engine of racial capitalism has transformed the Israeli displacement replacement economy of occupation into an economy of genocide. This is a joint criminal enterprise, where the acts of one ultimately contribute to a whole economy that drives, supplies, and enables this genocide. The entities named in the present report constitute a fraction of a much deeper structure of corporate involvement, profiteering from and enabling violations and crimes in the occupied Palestinian territory. Had they exercised due diligence, corporate entities would have ceased involvement with the Israel long ago. Today, the demand for accountability is all the more urgent. Any investment sustains a system of serious international crimes. Business and human rights obligations cannot be isolated from the Israeli illegal settler-colonial enterprise in the occupied Palestinian territory, which now functions as a genocidal machine, despite the International Court of Justice having ordered that it be fully and unconditionally dismantled. Corporate relations with Israel must cease until the occupation and apartheid end and reparations are made. The corporate sector, including its executives, must be held to account as a necessary step towards ending the genocide and disassembling the global system of racialized capitalism that underpins it. Recommendation: the Special Rapporteur urges Member States to impose sanctions and a full arms embargo on Israel, including all existing agreements and dual-use items such as technology and civilian heavy machinery. To suspend or prevent all trade agreements and investment relations, and impose sanctions, including asset freezes, on entities and individuals involved in activities that may endanger the Palestinians. To enforce accountability, ensuring that corporate entities face legal consequences for their involvement in serious violations of international law. The Special Rapporteur urges corporate entities. The Special Rapporteur urges corporate entities to promptly cease all business activities and terminate relationships directly linked with, contributing to, and causing human rights violations and international crimes against the Palestinian people, in accordance with international corporate responsibilities and the law of self-determination. To pay reparations to the Palestinian people, including in the form of an apartheid wealth tax along the lines of post-apartheid South Africa. The Special Rapporteur urges the International Criminal Court and national judiciaries to investigate and prosecute corporate executives and/or corporate entities for their part in the commission of international crimes and laundering of the proceeds from those crimes. The Special Rapporteur urges the United Nations. The Special Rapporteur urges the United Nations to comply with the International Court of Justice advisory opinion of 2024, to include all entities involved in Israeli unlawful occupation in the OHCHR database to be properly accessible on the OHCHR website. The Special Rapporteur urges trade unions, lawyers, civil society, and ordinary citizens to press for boycotts, divestments, sanctions, justice for Palestine, and accountability at the international and domestic levels. Together, the people of the world can end these unspeakable crimes. The present report is written at the cusp of a profound and tumultuous transformation. Globally witnessed atrocities require urgent accountability and justice, which demand diplomatic, economic, and legal action against those who have maintained and profited from an economy of occupation turned genocidal. What comes next depends on everyone.